Hi everyone. I'm going to start off by explaining who I am and why I think I am allowed to stand here and talk about this. Just going to warn you, I'm not very good at coding. I only learnt a little bit in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm a primary school teacher by trade, so that's why I know a little bit about children. I'm a rare breed of primary school teachers. Most primary school teachers are not big fans of technology unless it involves touching a board and making pretty things happen. Whereas I like pulling things apart and seeing what happens. So I'm going to talk to you about why children need to learn to code and hopefully give you some tips about how you can help. So the first thing was, about 5 years ago, a couple of people decided to create a report saying that there was a problem in the UK. Some of you may have heard of Ian Livingstone and Alex Hope. They are representatives of the video games and visual effects industries. And they wanted to say, and they wrote this big report to say that education isn't meeting their industry needs as a whole. They were saying that the UK used to be strong with creativity and technology, but they're not anymore. We've gone from 3rd to 6th in the video games industry over 2 years because there just isn't people with the ability to do it. And the school curriculum, which I'm sure many of you know for having been through it, was focused on office skills and nothing useful for programming and computer science. The other thing that was a problem was that people weren't aware what you could do if you learned STEM skills. You didn't know what exciting jobs there were for people who'd learnt about STEM. So they wrote this massive report and submitted it to the government. The report suggested lots and lots of recommendations, but the key ones is that computer science should be on the national curriculum. It said we need more specialist teachers, more effective use of video games and visual effects in STEM lessons, and to raise awareness of industry opportunities and equip students with the right knowledge and skills. So these were the 3 headlines that I think really grabbed attention. One of the things I'm going to draw your attention to there is we need specialist teachers. Bear in mind I'm a primary school teacher, so when I was teaching maths, English, history, drama, ICT, PE, okay, not in my school, I don't do sport, but all of those subjects, so I needed lots and lots of skills, and this report says we need specialist teachers. In Key Stage 3, a lot of the specialist teachers are PE and geography teachers that are given computer science to fill their timetable. Fact. The new national curriculum was launched in September 2014. And these were some of the terminologies that were handed to my colleagues, my primary school colleagues. You need to make sure that children can understand and apply the fundamental principles and concepts of computer science, including abstraction, logic, algorithms, and data representation. That makes so much sense to a primary school teacher. I'll let you read the rest of them. I'm not going to go into detail. But this curriculum was dropped on the desk with no targets. And in schools we're told you must achieve these targets. You must have children doing all of these goals. Instead, we got this. Lots of words that nobody understood. And we all looked at it and we all smiled and said, "That's lovely." So, the core of the new curriculum was that we needed to teach a whole new set of skills. Basic programming is now supposed to be taught to 4-year-olds. This is a Bebot. Have you seen a Bebot before? These are amazing. You'll notice they've got some buttons on top. Forwards, backwards, left, right, go. And there's a clear button. They're great for teaching programming skills, but most teachers give them to the children and allow them just to push the buttons and see what happens. What you need to do is use them to steer around a map and things like that, so they're teaching the idea of an algorithm. If you go forward, forward, left, forward, he's going to go da-da-da-da-da. Block-based coding needs to be taught to age 11, so that's basically Scratch. You've got Blockly, and a few others that are similar. Apple have produced Hopscotch, which is only on iPad. But basically it means Scratch. A text language from 11 plus. So in secondary schools, schools need to teach text-based programming. Most schools, but not all, have chosen Python as their text language, which is kind of cool. Other things that were new to the curriculum was understanding components, networks, how the World Wide Web works. little things like that, and physical computing, which is my favourite bit of it, building cool stuff that moves and lights up and has buttons, and it's all programmed by us. So these were all sort of new things to us. Just to give you an example, the previous curriculum was learn how to create a PowerPoint presentation, find a website. It was very, very boring. Sorry, I've been playing with Prezi, which means everything's all shiny. But are these useful skills to children? I think they are. My bugbear in school, even before the new curriculum was introduced, was that children didn't understand how computers work. So they would sit in the classroom, something would go wrong, they'd get an error message, and they'd just click past it and then wonder why the computer broke 10 minutes later. In my old school, we had Macs everywhere, and it would say your hard disk is full. So you could still just about use the computer, but try and save anything, you're doomed. So we spent a lot of time trying to encourage them to understand that if there's an error message, you read it and try and solve it. Understanding how a computer works really, really makes life easier for children. So this new curriculum saying you've got to teach children how a Wi-Fi network works was like a godsend. Children walking around saying, my Wi-Fi doesn't work. I can't get onto Google. And breathe. I think it allows us to encourage more fun project-based learning, this new curriculum. And there are links to real life. We can say, you know that computer game you play, you know Minecraft? Guess what? That's programmed, that's coded. If you learn to code, you can hack into that game. And also digital effects in films, as I said from the report earlier, that was the digital effects, visual effects industry saying we need programming skills as well. And I think programming skills are really cross-curricular. I'm sorry for those of you who aren't educators. I'm assuming you know that cross-curricular means subjects that mix together, but I will clarify a little bit here. Coding isn't just computer science, as far as I'm concerned. It's maths. It's electronics and design technology. It's literacy. That's the posh word for English, by the way. I was teaching in my last year at school that debugging was spell checking. So when we were doing a story, we were debugging our story. We weren't spell checking it because that sounds stupid. In fact, I found a lovely piece of software called ActiveLit where you create text-based adventure games. And my year sixes were so addicted, they wanted to keep doing it after school. And that's actual literacy skills, but they were creating an algorithm and all the rest of it throughout. They had to think about the verbs and the nouns. Obviously, you've got things like sensors, that's science, music, Sonic Pi, I know it's Ruby, I'm sorry. And there's just so many cross-curricular skills linked to learning to code. So this is where I'm going to ask you to maybe volunteer for me and come and speak at the microphone. I would like you just to take a moment and think about how you personally learned to code. And when you're ready, if anyone would like to, come and tell me how they learned to code. There's a little microphone right there. You can put your hand up if you want. Well, there we go, I've got some volunteers. Ooh, yay!
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Nick.
I learned to code twice.
Okay.
So when I was a child, we had a BBC at home. My dad was a teacher, so he used to bring it back.
Okay.
And I used to make rude, basic programs that would insult people. And so that was my joy when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And then I went and did music and things. And when I decided I wanted to become a software developer, I essentially just played.
Okay, so you learned with your dad at home and then played when you were older.
As an adult, yeah. And that included just exploring and breaking and then trying again.
Brilliant, thank you. Hello.
Hello. So I also taught myself twice, I think. So the first time I actually self-taught myself how to program on BASIC on my calculator. So I had no idea about anything, but I had a calculator and realized I could program
Yep.
it. I was like 16 or something.
You
I
had
said,
a play at home?
yeah, so I said, oh my God, I can do stuff, because some of my colleagues were actually using it to cheat or put to cheat code inside. But I said, no, I will just program games. And so I programmed like the worst minesweeper ever on my calculator, but it was really basic. And then I really learned how actually to do it properly later on when I was 18 or something, as proper studies. But yeah, that's what happened.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Like any good physics student, I taught myself to code so that I knew when I could finish doing my homework, because I was right.
Excellent. So you taught yourself at home.
So I had a computer at home because my dad worked in computing, and that was in the early 80s, so I learned a little bit of BASIC. I did a bit more when I went to university, but I was studying chemistry, so I just did a subsid for fun. I then taught chemistry for 11 years, then came out of teaching in 2005, learned to code properly at university, coded for a living for about 3 years. I've just rejoined teaching, and I'm now teaching computer science.
Yay! Sorry, that deserves a round of applause. Anyone teaching computer science gets a round of applause if they're doing it properly.
Okay, when I was at school, we didn't have any computers. So first time I saw computers really was at university, did a computing course there. Just as a little one add-on to my degree, and then got a job which turned out to be mostly computing.
Hiya. I was quite fortunate. I grew up with two complete nerds as older brothers, and they were quite a bit older than me. So we had a BBC Micro in the house, and they built for me, when I was very young, a thing called the Baby Basher, which just, you hit a random key and it produced lights and sounds. And so that sort of got me introduced to computers at an early age. But then, like years later, they helped sort of get me into programming a bit of BASIC on that. And but then later, I think I learned to code properly when I did my PhD, really, because I actually had to apply it to problems. But
Excellent. Thank you.
When I was in the sixth form, I think, and that would be 1970 or so, I tried to program a toy problem using Fortran from the manual. We had a teletype terminal for which we could make a punch tape, which was then taken to the local technical college, and you got a printout of the output. The most productive use in the event of the teletype terminal was it had a copying facility. So they created a tape that said Merry Christmas, and they could produce great lengths of it. The second time, which is I'd almost forgotten until your talk, was that this was in 1984 or so, and I was in the United States teaching mathematics, and the computer science department was part of the math department, and we had one of the first PCs at that time, and I had responsibility for teaching students of 18 or so some programming using BASIC. And then the third time would be about 1989, where I got a proper job as a programmer, and it was in the C language, and a large part of that was learning from a book. I read from a very good book, but it was a technical book, about how the language works, and I'm sorry, I'm losing my place. Yeah, the thing about that is that even though I had my own computer at that time, I didn't have any tools I could use at home to learn to program on. So now everything is just so easy, and you've got the internet.
Thank you very much. So you may have noticed a common thread to all of those. Very few people who came to speak learnt to code at school. There were a few people who honed their skills at university, but generally, people learned to code because they wanted to do something fun at home. They wanted to play. They had a project in mind. Okay? This is an issue for teachers because teachers like to stand at the front, like I'm doing now, feed knowledge. Everybody does the same activity and everybody leaves the lesson with roughly the same skill. So teachers aren't trained to teach computing either. So they don't know what they're doing in the first place. Some of the concepts, as you saw from the national curriculum, they're not clear. There are courses available for teachers we can go on. They usually cost thousands of pounds or a few £100s, or they're just very time consuming, or they're really, really boring. There are some exceptions. There are loads of resources for computer science now, but not all of them are very good. In fact, some of them are downright rubbish. There's a lot of fear. Teachers are afraid to know less than their children. Teachers are afraid of something they don't understand. And they're not confident with what I consider to be a relatively new style of teaching and learning. I think to teach computer science, we need to give children a project. Like we saw this afternoon in the education track, we need to say, what would you like to do? Here's some basic skills. What do you want to do with that? And let's let it run. So you may have 12 different projects going on in the classroom, and you as a teacher are sort of monitoring everything in a slightly crazy and non-linear manner. So these children are doing skill B, while these are doing skill J. And these ones over here can come and help these ones over here, and it's all much more chaotic. Got to move on. Unfortunately, right now, in a lot of schools, teachers are ignoring the problem. My partner goes into a lot of different schools, and he says most of the primary schools aren't doing anything. Or they're teaching it without really understanding what they're teaching. They're following a course that says, do this, then do this, then do this. I'm not going to mention any specific names here, but Discovery Education. It's terrible. Some of the content they're delivering is really poor because they just don't know what they're doing. Or the worst thing is they're buying into these schemes that cost, £2,000 that supposedly teaches everything step by step. And it's utterly useless because the teacher just sits back and follows this thing and doesn't understand what they're doing. Or like I did originally some years ago, buying resources and just leaving them on the shelf and saying, I've got that, isn't it nice? And doing nothing with it. There are ways you can help. This is the key thing. There's a group called Code Club. I hope you've heard of Code Club. Can you put your hand up if you've heard of it? Good. Please help Code Club. They're great. I created an event called Coding Evening, which I'll talk more about in a second. And there are Twitter chats going on all the time, to the point that sometimes you have to mute Twitter. And there's Bet Chat, there's Kaz Chat, there's God knows whatever else chat, which is teachers asking for help all of the time. And there are community events like Raspberry Jams. In fact, I know there are 2 Raspberry Jams going on today, where there are teachers going to speak to Raspberry Pi community members and asking for help. So a little bit more about Code Club. Code Club is free for teachers to run. They don't have to pay anything to do Code Club. A teacher doesn't have to run a Code Club. They can sit at the back of the room and have one of you guys running the club. Or one of you guys can sit at the back of the room and help the teacher. That's up to you to negotiate. It's aimed at 9 to 11-year-olds. The resources are all online and they're easy to use. You just sign up on the website and look for local schools that are looking for helpers. When I signed up, which was 2 or 3 years ago, I couldn't find a helper. I had to wing it. Luckily, I'm already a bit of a geek, so I didn't find it too difficult. But there are lots and lots of teachers out there who regularly come to me and say, I don't have a clue. I can't do this on my own. I need some help. A lot of businesses are saying to their employees, if you are willing to help in this school, that's fine. We'll let you leave at 3 o'clock to go. So it's worth asking your employer if you can go and help support a code club in your local school. Don't be afraid, the children don't bite much. It's the teachers you've got to worry about. And if you're not confident leading, honestly, just say to a teacher, can I be there to be your help? If you want to lead it, that's fine, but let me be there to support. Or if you are confident, and I know some of you are, say I'll run it and you can sit back and put your feet up. So I'm going to talk about Coding Evening now, which is an event I created originally in Twickenham. There are a couple of my people here. Hi Danny, hi Tim. So basically I said, I realised there are lots of these teachers lacking in confidence. Let's invite them to a pub. Teachers like to drink. Let's invite some local community members that I know enjoy coding and stuff, and let's see what happens. My first coding evening, there's about 12 to 15 of us, 4 or 5 teachers and a few Raspberry Pi community members and a few people who'd just randomly seen it and popped along. And what's evolved now in Twickenham is about 30 people turn up, a lot of new teachers each session, and every time they walk in the door, tentatively clutching their Eventbrite printout, am I allowed? I'm new, I don't know anything. Is it okay? And every time, the lovely people like Tim and Danny scoop them up and say, look at this amazing thing you can use in your classroom. And the teachers go, okay. And by the end of it, they're really excited and they've got ideas and can I come again? Can I bring a friend? Can I bring my Raspberry Pi and you can show me how it works? I have to put on there, it doesn't have to be in a pub because some people don't like going to a pub. I was really lucky with my coding evenings because I managed to persuade Pimaroni to buy us a round of drinks. So one event, we had free drinks for everyone who turned up. It was amazing how high the turnout was for that one. So if you work in a business that might be willing to sponsor £100 to a coding evening, get in touch. When I was talking about coding evening, not long after I launched, a friend of mine in Peterborough said, oh, can I do one? And then a group in Horsham said, oh, can I do one? So we currently have coding evenings in Southend, Horsham, Peterborough, Twickenham, and I feel like there's another one, West Berks was the other one. And I'm more than happy to support you if you want to run one yourself, and I'm very aware that I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to speed up in case you guys want to ask questions. I've got some quotes here from children in my class that I used to teach, and I'm going to draw your attention to this spelling. It's imagination for those of you who are not great at phonetics. A-M-A-J-I-N-A-S-H-O-N. These are 7-year-olds. So you can make butterflies change colour if you are learning to code. I quite like the bottom one, it's quite profound. I'm not sure he meant to be that deep, but... and then these are the slightly older ones. These are our 10 and 11-year-olds. And bless them, they do say some lovely things. I apologise if you can't read these very clearly. I will make this available. But they do say some really lovely things. And you'll notice it's girls and boys who are enjoying it. Actually, slightly more girls up there. Isabella in particular came and did a speech at a Raspberry Jam I ran in Wimbledon about girls and coding. 3 years ago, she would cry if she was asked to go on stage to do anything. So we thought that was quite a big achievement. And that's it from me. I have about 1 minute for questions, so I don't know if there are any. If not, feel free to grab me afterwards, unless Law reminds me slightly overrunning. Just looking a bit scared there. Do I have any questions? Excellent. I can speak to anyone. I'll be around afterwards, don't worry. All right, thank you very much.